Welcome back to Dubbzi Bricks for another episode of building the Tantive in Lego. In the last update we were prototyping this skin here, and I haven't placed the order just yet for the pieces that we need to do this. Now, in the last update there were a lot of comments about ideas of how to improve the gaps around here and different pieces that I could use. Somebody suggested using some jumper plates under there, however that's going to be the same as the door rail piece just there. Somebody else suggested wedge plates underneath, however again, if I put a wedge plate on this one here, it's going to be knocking into that, and if I tuck it underneath then this one's going to be coming up, so the wedge plates don't really work. When I built this originally, this was how long I thought this needed to be, but only after I started remeasuring things realised that the red line needs to be that wide. So there is a 6x2 wedge plate which could go on the top, but then we will have studs exposed. So I'm not sure whether or not that's going to work, or whether it's going to look good is another matter. Now, with this here, the reason I've gone for the tiles is this is not a perfect circle. As you can see, you've got little chunks taken out of it. So by tiling, I've then put a plate on the end which is overlapping, so it's harder to see those gaps around it. However, obviously it does mean I've got these ugly gaps at the top. So what I'm just considering is, would it be better to try and make this better looking on the top and then show those gaps and then try and work on the circle a little bit later? I'm not sure. We're going to have a play with it. I have just had an order come in for a load of parts which I ordered before the last update, and in there are some of these wedges here, but the 6 long ones, so there's no stud on the end. And I'm just wondering, if I do brick build it, will that fill the gap nicely? Now the ones I've ordered are in white, but they do them in red or dark red, so if it does work I could order them when I order all of the pieces for doing the skin. So that's what we're going to start with experimenting with. I've obviously still got to work out exactly what pieces I'm going to need for that. I am considering using these slopes here for this section as well and brick build it this way. I think it might just give it a little bit more strength, and it'll be a lot easier for me to connect it to the actual fuselage as well. There was a comment asking, do I use Bricklink? It came up a couple of times because in the last update I was saying about these pieces here not being available on lego.com, and also the bits I was going to use in the corridor. And the answer is yes, I do use Bricklink, but I don't use it very often. And the reason being is, here in Ireland we don't have that many Bricklink stores, and when you're ordering a large quantity of different pieces, it's very rare to be able to get them all from one buyer. So by the time you start taking the cost of postage and packaging into account, import taxes and all that sort of thing, it works out cheaper for me to get it from lego.com, and it's also a lot easier as well for me to get it from Lego. So yeah, that's the answer in regards to that. Somebody also commented on when I mentioned about this part here, the fact that I've made it rectangular because it's easier rather than it being the correct shape. And if I understood their comment correctly, they were saying about using the panels here to get the angle on that part, and I think that's a fantastic idea. So that is something that I will be improving on in the very near future. So first things first, let's get the parts out and show you what we had in the Lego order. Then I'm going to do a little bit more prototyping on this section just to find out if brick built is going to look better, and then finally we're going to start working on the cockpit. And I've had an order come in from lego.com, and all of these pieces will be shown in a Gotham build series. However, I know everybody doesn't watch both my build series, so I thought I'd show it in this one separately. And in this part here we have got a whole selection of pieces which we're going to be using for greebling and also the skins. We've got these 1x6 wedge plates. In here we've got a whole load of pieces for greebling, from hockey sticks to the taps to these little clips here for holding pipes on. It's got a whole load of those. We've got some 1x1 plates and bricks. We've got a load of these pieces here which we're going to be using for helping to keep the panels on. We got plates in here. We've got 1x4, 1x6, 1x8, 2x6, 2x8, 2x16 and 2x14 I think it is. In here we've got a whole load of brackets, some black slopes and inverted slopes for the display stand. We've got more of the clip pieces in here and the 2 wide ones as well. We've got some of the 4x4 dark bluish grey tiles there for the corridor section. Got some white tiles. We've got some more of the clip pieces. We've got some 2x2 slopes and inverted slopes in black, and 2x3s inverted and normal. Again, these are for the display stand. 3x2 and 4x2 black bricks, again for the display stand. So 1x1, 2x2 and 2x6 tiles in there. So a really nice selection of pieces we've got here, which is going to enable us to get a lot of work done on our TANTIVE IV, and the prototyping's coming along quite nicely. There's so much you can do with the angles of these. At the moment, the plate's nowhere near at the right angle. You can see the wedge plate there as opposed to where this one's going. So I do need to get it a little bit more, but it's just a case of working with the plates behind. But you get a good idea of whether or not you're going to be able to achieve what you need to achieve on here. Now, at the moment, I'm using these wedge pieces just here, which are these ones. They're 6 long and they're 1 brick in height once you get to the very end of them. So there's no studs on the top, which is really nice. However, they're really expensive. I think they're like 56 cents each. So when you think of how many I'm going to need on here, it's probably going to be well over 100, well over 50 euro just for a handful of pieces. So I'm just wondering whether or not if I replace the bottom here with a 2x2 tile there, then a 2x2 plate, and then a tile plate, and sort of like stagger it going up, it might enable me to have the same effect, because there is a bit of a gap here, so there is room to do so. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a play with that next. But I do think that going along the brick built way is the way forward. You have got this ugly gap underneath here, and I'm not sure whether or not I might be able to get this a little bit closer. The connection point is the biggest problem at the moment, and what I mean by that is this ball joint here is hitting on the clip there. It's hitting on this slope here, which I'm using to keep everything in place. However, I could do a different technique of connecting it all together, and then that will enable me a little bit more flexibility, but it's going to be a lot more part intensive. So I do think I'm going to go down the brick built route as opposed to the tiles over the far side there. So I'm glad I didn't place the order for all those red tiles, as I don't know which ones I'm going to need. But what we will need are a whole load of these L-shaped plates, tiles, well, if you want to class them as, in dark red and in white. So yeah, we're just going to have a bit of a play now, make one of these panels up using plates as opposed to those wedge pieces, and then fingers crossed we'll be able to get away with it. And then at least now we have a good idea of what parts we can order, and hopefully we'll be able to get that order placed later on today. A little bit more experimentation going on here with the pieces, and it looks like I can get away with using the 2x1 grill wedge piece. Now I know they do smooth versions of that as well, but I believe it's almost twice as expensive to have it without the grill on there, so I think I will go for these ones here. But yeah, I'm really happy of how that is coming along on the end here. I think it's going to be a lot better than the plate version. So let's work out what pieces we need to order in, and let's get that order placed as soon as possible. And we just placed a massive order with Lego.com for the pieces for doing the panelling on the Tantive's cockpit area just here. I hope I've ordered all the pieces I need. I had a rough count of the parts, and I think I've got the main bits there. There are a lot of bricks I'm going to need, but I am going to be going to the Dublin Lego store, so fingers crossed they'll have a good selection of white pieces on there. They generally do have quite a few bricks on there, so yeah, we'll just keep our fingers crossed with that. Now, on the order that I've just placed, I've ordered a whole load of these wedge pieces in both dark red and white, and they cost about 6 or 7 cents each. I've ordered several hundred of them. These parts here, 2 wedges do exactly the same job as one of these, and these are 46 cents each. So by going for those smaller pieces, it's using a fraction of the cost. So hopefully it's going to look just as good. There will be an extra ridge, and what I mean by that is the little bump that comes up, but you're not going to notice it because it's going to be hidden behind the modified tile plate, whatever you class it as. Now, one thing I've just noticed is this here looks to me like it's leaning out to the left, and this one looks like it's leaning out to the right, just fractionally, and it's probably due to the sheer weight of the build that's on the end of the Technic bricks there. So I just need to get a little bit more strength into the structure to help prop that up. Shouldn't be too hard to do. I've got a couple of ideas of how I'm going to go about doing so. Whilst I'm at it, I'm also going to amend these 2 circles here. I'm going to make them 2 studs wide. Originally they were over here by about 3 studs, and the same on this side, which just means it's the circle's a little bit smaller than what it needs to be for that area. However, once I've built the panels on, I can easily stick something on the bottom of the panel that will rest between the 2. That way, it's I don't have to rebuild or redesign that circle, because I'm quite happy with how that's come out. So anyway, without further ado, let's start making the amendments to the structure on here to get the strength into it and get those circles all rebuilt. And there we have, we've amended the very bottom of this to give a little bit more strength into there. We now have got very little droop, if any at all. So I'm glad I've made that amendment. Now I'm just going to start experimenting with the front bit again, just to see if I can get the right angle on there. And I think we're coming up with some ideas here for getting the slope on the front section just here. And I've used a ball joint here and a hinge piece. And it's enabling me to just tilt it down ever so slightly. And it's giving me the angle that I'm after on there. Now, the one problem with this, and it's the same on the original version, is you've got so many studs exposed on here. So I was just wondering whether or not I could build it in the reverse, using the reverse wedges to what we got at the moment, and put it this way round. Hopefully I'll be able to connect it to a couple of points on there. But then I've got the studs going smoothly along this edge. I can actually tie all of this, and then you're not going to see them. So it could work out a lot better. There will still be studs at the back here, and there'll be a couple of gaps. However, it's not going to be as noticeable because there'll be greebling going over the top of it. So it's just something I think I'm going to have an experiment with. I'm going to remove this panel just here and then try attaching this one. Obviously, this hinge piece here won't work because the studs are going in a different direction, but we should be able to just attach another ball joint to that part, and then fingers crossed that will all work out. Once I've worked this part out, I then need to start building the wall section into there. But yeah, hopefully we're coming up with some solutions here to try and make this look a little bit more polished. And this may not have been what I was intending on doing in this update. However, it is well worthwhile doing so. I just feel it looks so much more polished. I mean, if you look at this side here compared with over this side, I know I'm missing the plate on there, but it just looks so much nicer already. And I think it's well worthwhile taking the time to get this looking as tidy as possible. Now, I've changed the technique so many times on here. With the plate coming down, I knew this was going to be an issue, which is probably why I avoided it the first time round. But I am glad I've gone back to it. And we have a ball joint underneath this here. Originally it was above it. Over here I had a ball joint, however that wasn't working. It was just a fraction out. And I discovered if I put a Technic brick, one with the axle part in there, there's a ball joint piece, and I'll put an image on screen now of what part I've used, and it enables you to get the exact length you need, so there's no strain being put on the ball joint. I've had to use jumper plates to get it all lined up properly on there, but at least we've come up with a solution. But now we've got the structural side of this all sorted, I can finally start adding all of those details into that part of the build. And we need to make another decision in regards to the looks of this part of the build. I've just placed these on the top here, and they are all connected on the back there with the studs, and that works out perfectly. Got loads of strength in there. The thing I don't like though are these holes that you get along here where the plates join. At the bottom, because the plates are reversed, you've got a nice smooth edge on there. And when you look at this here compared to this side here, for me, it's night and day different as to how nice it looks. So I'm just wondering whether or not I should reverse this build around so it's the same angle as that just there. The problem is I'm going to be having the panels going on here, so the more studs I've got to connect to, the better. So yeah, it's a case of now working out what is going to be the best way round. But I want it to look the best, but also need it to be strong enough to take the structure that's going to be going above. I'm much happier with this new look, and I think it was well worthwhile taking the time to smooth this edge out. And on here we've connected it using a ball joint and a hinge piece at the back just there. Although the ball joint is in the wrong colour, it's going to be covered up by the panel, so that's not an issue. It is a shame they don't do those in more colours. Now what I'm going to do now is just replicate it on that side over there. What I don't want to do is cover all of this over with framework and then get to that side and think, how did I do it? And then have to start dismantling things to see where each brick is connected. So let's make those changes first of all. Then once we've done that, I can then finally make a start on building the circle that goes around there. And that's both sides done, and much happier with that. I think it looks so much better than the previous version. One problem I've now got is the slope on here doesn't line up with the slopes on there. It's just a fraction out, probably by about one stud. So I'm just going to need to amend that circle there. I haven't even started on this one yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do this end so it's all in line perfectly with that part. And then what I'll do is I'll just replicate it onto the other side. And then once we've done that, we can get on with the next part of the build. And that's the greebling all sorted out on this end of the vessel, and that's all been raised up by, I think it was one plate in the end. That's all it needed. So happy enough with how that's all come together. Now I need to do is do the same on the other end. The details on here are different to the opposite end. I thought it'd be nice to have a little bit of variety on there. So let's make a change to the other end now, get that to the correct height, and then I can finally make a start on those inner circles. And that's one of the two circles all built up, and it's nice and strong, which is good. The technique I've used at the bottom is slightly different than before, but it's giving it more strength, which is all good. Now this angle here seems really steep. However, I've compared it to the playset version and it is absolutely spot on. So it's obviously one of these things that's just going to look deceptive until it's all finished. I'm happy with how we're going with that. Now, due to me, the way I built it, I've raised this one up now by the 1 brick. It means I've got also raised that slope up at the back there by 1 brick as well. Otherwise, it's not going to have the correct height on there. So yeah, just a couple of amendments we need to make. We've got to do a little bit of work on the back there anyway, so it's not a big deal to make that change. Now, in regards to the cockpit area here, this is a really large space for the cockpit. If you watch the end of Rogue One, where you've got Princess Leia in the cockpit area where she's handed the plans, it doesn't look like it's that deep a room. And this looks considerably deeper than what it needs to be. When the Rebel Fleet Trooper brings the plans to her, he walks on corridor and turns right into the cockpit. So what I'm considering doing is having a corridor at the back here to use up some of that space. It's going to make that scene a little bit more accurate, or it's going to make it look accurate. I'm going to be using creative license because if you look behind here when he's coming in the doorway, you see a room at the back there, and it's not the corridor that we've got going through just there. Due to the scaling issues that you have, which we've covered numerous times in previous episodes, we're just doing it how we feel it's going to look good. So we're going to put a doorway just on this side and this side here as well. They're obviously going to be closed doorways. So we use some of the printed bricks that we got in the TANTIVE hallway sets. And I just think that's going to complete this section. It's going to have a removable section on here, so you're going to be able to see behind there, and also if you're peering through, it'd be good to see everything. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing now. So I'm not going to build this second ring up just yet. It's going to be a lot easier for me to be able to get my hands in here and have that little bit more room for when I'm putting the bricks together. And it's nice seeing the cockpit area and the corridor all mapped out. With the cockpit area just here, what I'm going to do is put some pipes or some cylinders on the back there. I'm just going to use creative license and give it the details I want to give it on there. The only image I'm going to be using is for the front section just here, which is what you see at the end of Rogue One. I think that's going to be perfectly okay. And with these parts here, I'm going to need to dismantle this wall just a little bit so I can put some snot bricks in there so I can do the same corridor technique as we've used further back just there. And I just need to squeeze the door in. Now what I'll probably end up doing is building up another white wall all the way up here just to cover all of this ugly filler brick. And I want to have it so that when any removable panels come off, you can't see any filler brick at all. So it's a nice polished look when it's all finished. So anyway, let's carry on with the building and get those walls all constructed. That's one side of the cockpit. Structurally all sorted. Needs to be all the details on there, which we'll concentrate on a little bit later. But I had to rewatch the end of Rogue One, just to get a couple of details on there. And then I realised that the entrance coming into it is almost like a mini corridor. It's not just a doorway. So I ended up having to pull up the 16 by 16 plate that was underneath it after I'd already built on it, and then replate it just so I could get some tiles down so I can have the same door effect as we've got all throughout the rest of the vessel. Luckily enough, it peeled off easily and I was able to just transfer the build from one over to the other. And then whilst I was also looking at it, I noticed that inside the cockpit, it actually curves onto the wall, has a curve on it. So again, I've had to put some snot bricks there, and then we're just able to curve that round nicely as well. So yeah, happy with how this is all coming together. But what I need to do now is have a good sort through my Lego collection to find out a load more white pieces, as I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel, just getting that part done there. And that's all the walls all built up, ready for the finer details to go on there. Put a couple of cupboards on the side there. I just think they look really good on the Tantive. I have seen people use those on the corridors, and I thought they always look good. So happy to have them in this cockpit section where we're going to be using a lot of creative license for it. I've attached these plates here to this part, and it's actually pulled that up just by a fraction. It wasn't even half a plate, but there was obviously a little bit of give on there. So once again, this is all helping to strengthen the entire build up, which is always nice to see happen. But we've used so many parts in this, and I'm getting so low on white pieces. And despite the fact I placed an order for, I think it was close to 3,000 pieces about 2 or 3 days ago, I know I'm going to have to order even more. These brackets here, for example, I purchased those for doing more of the corridors, and I wasn't anticipating putting a corridor here. So again, that's just used up a load of pieces, which I wasn't expecting. But yeah, really happy with how this has come out. And I mentioned it before, I'm so pleased that I've went for making the improvements to the front section there. Having those studs exposed is certainly gives it a more polished look. And I love the fact that you haven't got these horrible gaps here where the studs connect on this part. I think reversing the plates round was the right decision. Don't have to worry about here, as there's going to be a skin covering those ones. But yeah, there we have it. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the update. If you have, please remember to give us a big thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content on the channell. And if you know anybody else you think would be interested in building the Tantive in Lego, if you could share the channel with them, it'd be much appreciated. Anyway, thanks for popping on by. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.